The following video is based upon true crime content. Therefore, it may contain images and/or language that some find disturbing. For this reason, viewer discretion is advised. Hi, everyone. How we doing? We're going to do a quick recap of what we've already watched on this hearing. Oop.
How we doing?
Did it again.
We're going to do a quick recap.
Got to turn the volume down on my second PC. Let's see. Want to make sure my audio is all right before we get started. It is. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Welcome in, Miss Laura. So they had that. Did you guys see they had that hearing today for Morgan Geiger, one of the not OnlyFans, one of the Slenderman stabbing little girls? I didn't watch it all, but I wanted to. I started recording some of it because I want to trim it down for us to rewatch it this weekend. So you guys, I put a poll up. Let me know what you think about it. All right. So where's my? I thought I had a pre. And here it is. Now I'm going to kind of give you guys an overview of what we've already watched the first day in case we have somebody in here that wasn't with us or in our first live stream, but it's quick. Courtney Clenney is on trial for the homicide of her boyfriend, Christian Obumseli. Courtney was 26 years old at the time of the crime, which was committed on April the 3rd of 2022, and it took place in the couple's waterfront luxury high-rise apartment unit. The probable cause hearing lasted over 2 days. Now, on day one of the probable cause hearing, the defense worked diligently to suppress certain pieces of evidence, which were video and audio recordings. In one of the responses to suppressing this evidence, the judge made the comment that she heard Courtney yelling very loudly, so much so that she had to turn the volume down. And the prosecution argued that if she's yelling so loudly that people outside of her unit can hear, then the expectation of privacy is no longer there. Now, the defense also would like to get out some of these extractions of the cell phones. We have the various cell phone recordings that he took, but we also have call timelines, location data, and text messages to look at. There were some very damning text messages between Courtney and Christian Obumseli. They brought the lead detective in. I did just recently upload a separate video of his testimony in this hearing, if you'd like to go and watch that. To be more specific, there were a few things that stood out to me that I wanted to bring up. Number one is that they knew all along from when they were in the unit that Christian wasn't going to make it, or that he didn't make it. They knew while they were at the apartment unit talking to her and telling her what was going to happen next. And honestly, I wasn't sure of that. I always thought that the police on scene there were just kind of waiting to hear what was going on with him at the hospital. But it does look like, even though the paramedics came on scene and did try to revive him, it was just too late. He had lost too much blood. Christian died of a stab wound to his clavicle. Now, Clenney tried to play it off as if she had thrown the knife out of fear. She was one to throw like glass and everything else at him, so it wasn't uncommon for her to throw something at him to break things. She also claimed that Christian was hurting her and threatening her. However, based upon video footage from prior to the incident, the police department were able to confirm that any type of bruising or injuries that she had on her body happened before the incident that evening. Their apartment unit was over 1,800 square feet. And although it was very large, it did not appear overly spacious in the body cam footage because of the fact that, one, there was just stuff thrown everywhere in that unit. Now, they did say that they were preparing to move, but it was just a lot of it was just items that had just been laying around that weren't picked up. It wasn't to the point of hoarding. It didn't look like that, but there was stuff everywhere, all over, laying over furniture. It just seemed like clutter. There was clutter on the floor everywhere. Now, in addition to that, they had two dogs. Well, they were Courtney's dogs. And they also lived in the apartment there with her and Christian. Now, based upon Courtney's cell phone data, they were able to pull up some October 9th messages that were very damning to Courtney. At that point in time, she had physically assaulted him with a phone. She had spit on him, and she had stabbed him with another item. I don't know if it was specified what type of item she'd stabbed him with at that point. This was a separate incident. Again, October the 9th of 2021. So these messages are back and forth between her and Christian regarding him on his way going to the hospital. Now, the unit that they lived in, they had key fobs for the elevator because it was one of those that they had an elevator that would go directly into a foyer area of their unit. They had just moved in January of 2022, and by March, Courtney had lost her key fob. Courtney also has previous criminal history. She has a history of battery in Vegas with Christian. She has a DUI in Texas in September of 2015 and another DUI in California. That second DUI did occur while the other one was still pending. Now, although she does come across as quite the train wreck, Courtney had $2 million in her bank account at the time of the incident. She ended up transferring a majority of those funds over to her father's account after everything happened. My thought is that that's where these funds for her attorneys are coming from. Now, people do claim that her mom and dad had money. I don't know. One of the videos that Christian had on his phone was used to show that she had prior bruises on her before the incident. In fact, it was a video that was taken the same day at 10 a.m. of the night that Christian died. The state advised that they had 32 pieces of total evidence. We also found out that the dad was listening into the mother's phone call with the detectives. So after the incident occurred and they take Courtney down to the police station, they detain her for questioning. They do not arrest her. Now, since she had been on the phone with her mom and her mom knew what had happened, her mother and her father were over in Texas working to get her an attorney. So she was in the interview room for a little while, and then an attorney did come in. But because she was on the phone with her mother, I don't know if it was during or right after. It's all very, it's almost like she was there with her on the phone before it happened and after it happened, possibly when it happened. So the detectives made a phone call to the mother, and of course they recorded it, and they told her that they were trying to get some information about what she knew of what happened. They did not know that Dad was listening in on the other line. At one point, he chimed in and advised the detectives that their lawyer had arrived at the station, and he wanted him to be present while she was being questioned. So in the interview room, you'll see an attorney just automatically appear. Now, although she never flat out said, "I want to speak to an attorney," her dad took care of that, and she knew that he was taking care of it. That's why she didn't speak for herself. There were some messages from January the 30th through February the 1st that were very damning because it was another argument that Christian and Courtney had, and it does not show a good light on Courtney. Again, more messages on February the 27th and the 28th, where Christian has written a long love letter to Courtney. And in this love letter, he describes her past actions towards him, which some were very, very hateful. He explains that he's been seeing a counselor and he was thinking of leaving her. But if she was willing to work with him to get through it, then he was too. Okay, that catches us up from part 1 of day 1 of the preliminary hearing, and kind of also gives you a catch up on the case itself. All right, So, don't forget to, you guys, I just put up that poll for this weekend to watch some stuff together. So, check that out. Let me know what you think about that. And I think I think we're getting some positive feedback on it. Looks like you guys want to do that. And let's get to the hearing. This was November. Well, it'll say it on here. I've trimmed this down for us all so that we don't have to listen, or we don't have to wait through all the sidebars. And I actually sped it up a little bit. So if it sounds like so if it sounds a little high pitched, I sped it up on my editing thing, not on YouTube. So it might sound just a teeny bit high pitched. But trust me, we needed it because this is kind of a slow one. But what I find interesting about this part is how her defense attorney goes at the lead detective. And in my opinion, it was warranted. Is anybody else having issues so far that's been watching this with us? Is anybody else having issues with how the lead detective seems to not know that much about the case going into this hearing here? Do you think that he should know more about this case? Or do you think that it's a play, that's something that might be part of what the prosecution wanted him to do? I don't know. I was getting really irritated over him saying, I don't remember, I don't know, I don't have those notes with me, that kind of thing. So I would love your thoughts on that. I also turned up the volume a bit on this. It's really hard to hear the judge in this particular hearing.
Yes.
You have my contact information, is that fair to say?
Yes.
And I also communicate with Detective Jerez, who was part of your team that night, correct?
Yes.
At what time do you recall did Detective Jerez let you know that there's an attorney who's representing Miss Clenney? Spent some time with you and with Courtney. I believe I gave you my phone number, correct?
Yes.
You have my contact information, is that fair to say?
Yes.
And I also communicate with Detective Jerez, who was part of your team that night, correct?
Yes.
At what time do you recall did Detective Jerez let you know that there's an attorney who's representing Miss Clenney?
It was later in the afternoon.
Later in the afternoon?
Yeah.
And did she notify you by text or by phone call?
When we spoke in the station.
So she notified you orally,
Yeah.
verbally.
Yeah.
What time did you start the interview with Miss Clenney?
I want to say like 6 or 7, possibly.
And I think the interview would have been video recorded, correct?
Yes.
And in that video recording, it has a timestamp, correct?
Yes.
So the best evidence for that would be the timestamp on the video, right?
Correct.
I don't want to hold you to a time unless you know 100%.
I don't know
Fair?
100%.
Okay. Would that be noted in one of your reports?
Yes.
Now, when you started your interview of Ms. Clenney, you already knew that Mr. Obumseli was deceased, correct?
Yes.
You did not tell her that, correct?
I did not.
About how many times would you say she asked about how he was doing throughout the course of that interview?
Several times.
Several, more than 3, more than 5, less than 10?
About 3 or 4 times.
And what did you tell her every time that she was asking about how he's doing?
That he was just at the hospital and they're still working on him.
And so that's not the truth. That was a lie, correct?
Correct.
Another thing I wanted to remind you guys of, obviously this video quality is not good on this particular hearing. I noticed that in the future hearings it does get better, but it gets a little bit better the further in we go. Therefore, I have in about 10 minutes, you'll see where I've put the captions up for everyone.
Now, you've produced a report in this case, correct? I think you abbreviated 310 or 301?
Yes.
And what kind of report is that?
That's just a brief report on the investigation.
Okay, and so you have not prepared a final homicide report then, correct?
A supplement? No.
No. And are you working on that?
Yes.
And when will that be available for disclosure?
Objection. Hopefully soon.
Okay. And the contents of that report are going to be consistent with what you're saying here today, correct?
Yes.
And there's not going to be anything added or anything different, correct?
No.
Prior to conducting the interview with Ms. Clenney, did you conduct any background investigation, speak to any other potential witnesses or anything like that prior to conducting her interview?
No.
Did you arrive at the apartment? Was that
Yes.
your initial arrival point, I believe?
Yes.
Okay. So were you able to view the condition of the apartment at that time, or did you go back later?
I briefly looked at the apartment, the condition first, and then I went back later on and looked at it again.
Okay. And did you speak to any of the first responding officers prior to conducting your interview with Ms. Clenney?
Very shortly.
Did they mention to you that she was in a state of panic at the time
Yes.
when they first showed up?
Yes.
She was covered in blood, right?
Yes.
Which was consistent with, I think, what you said you reviewed some body-worn camera. That would be consistent with her cradling Mr. Obumseli in the living room area, correct?
Yes.
And did the other responding officers... Well, let me ask you this. What was her mental state at the time that you first spoke to her?
When I spoke to her, she was more calm than when she was at the building. But she was still a bit shaken up due to what occurred.
Which that would be kind of a normal human reaction, right?
Yes.
Now, also, I believe in the body-worn camera, let me ask you, have you reviewed all the body-worn camera of all the responding officers that evening?
Not all of them, most.
Okay. And a lot of them, Courtney's expressing her concern for Christian, right?
Yes.
And she's in a state of... Again, and her dogs are running around the apartment barking. It's a very hectic scene, right?
Yes.
Now, you heard or you saw, I think when you were testifying, direct a clip of part of Ms. Clenney's statement, correct?
Yes.
And she describes the attack on her by Mr. Obumseli, correct?
Yes.
There's nobody else in that apartment at the time, correct?
Correct.
There's absolutely no eyewitnesses to what occurred in the apartment on April 3rd, 22, correct?
Correct.
So your investigation, it focuses around what happened after, basically, right?
Yeah.
Now, the part of the interview that we saw, that was actually the third time that you asked her to kind of recount her thing. And the first time, do you recall what she said the first time?
It was about the same as the one played on the video.
Okay, so, I mean, there was an argument, right?
Yes.
And your subsequent investigation showed the text messages and some calls for, and I'm talking about April 3rd, 2022. We'll get to the other stuff later. But on April 3rd, 2022, you have the video of them in the morning. Doesn't seem like there's anything wrong,
Yeah.
right? You have some text messages and some calls that occur right before that.
Yeah.
Right before around 4:30 p.m., correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and then we know things go bad, right? Yeah. We know that because some neighbors called the police, right?
Yes.
They heard screaming and yelling.
Yes.
Right? We know that your investigation also revealed that Courtney was actually on the phone with her mom, right? Deborah
Yes.
Clenney. And she was actually on the phone with her at the time that Chris received the wound, correct?
That when he received the wound?
Yeah.
Possibly yes.
Okay. And so when Courtney's recounting what happened, she talks about a physical struggle with Obumseli, right?
Yes.
How big, meaning how tall is Mr. Obumseli?
He's taller than her.
Is he 6'2"?
Yeah. Low 6.
Low
6'1",
6'1"?
6'2", something like that.
How much does he weigh?
I want to say about 200 pounds. Or,
Okay. And how tall is Courtney Clenney?
she's about 5'8".
And how much did she weigh at the time?
About 140, 150.
Okay, so Obumseli outweighs her by about 60, 70 pounds and is much taller, right?
Yes.
Now, she describes his attack on several occasions. I think the third time, right? She mentions that he got in a crouching position, or he was crouching, and then he came at her, right?
I don't remember that.
No, that's not her statement?
I don't remember that.
Okay. Do you remember her saying she could see the whites of his eyes?
No.
Did you review her statement before coming here to testify today?
Objection, counsel testifying. Also arguing.
I reviewed a part of it.
Part of it, not the whole thing. So, again, but you're saying her testimony from the first time you asked her to recount what occurred was similar to the third time, right?
Correct.
In the arrest, did you author this arrest warrant? And I'm holding it up. It's been admitted into evidence, and Judge, procedurally, I would move to submit. Try to move into evidence all defense exhibits which were previously provided to the court. I believe
I have no objection.
defense exhibit A, I believe, was the arrest warrant.
I don't have any evidence from the defense.
Wait, I'm sorry, hold on. I misunderstood something. Can we approach that part?
So your inclusion of that portion that says something about self-defense, it kind of makes it sound like that's something nefarious or somebody's being coached, right? The way you wrote it?
Counsel testifying.
These are your words that you adopted, right? It kind of makes it sound like there's a cover-up, right?
Yes.
And you put these words in here without seeing the full and complete text message, correct?
Yes.
Now, on the screen here, I think it's Defense Exhibit C, right? This is the complete text message. At 4:04 p.m., which would be Texas time, so that would be 5:04 p.m., okay, Miami time. Please tell me what's happening. This is from Deborah to Courtney, my sunshine. Please tell me what's happening. You have to call me, exclamation point. Even though it was self-defense, don't say anything with the police without getting a lawyer first. Call me, please. It's very important. Even though it was self-defense, you cannot say anything without an attorney, exclamation point. Innocent people get in trouble all the time. Right? That's the complete message. And this is a mother, right, that's in another state. Right?
Objection, counsel testifying, no question pending, both to everything that was just said and now.
Sure. Do you know where Miss Clenney was? Meaning Deborah Clenney on the date of April 3rd, 2022?
Yes.
And where was she?
Texas.
And where was Courtney?
In Miami.
Okay. So, what seems clear to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it appears that Miss Deborah Clenney was unable to contact her daughter at least between 5:04 p.m. Miami time, and then even going into the late night of 10:46 p.m. There's no responses, right, by Courtney?
Correct.
So this could be a very concerned mother, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Deborah was on the phone with Courtney listening to the argument that night, right?
Yes.
And I believe she told you that when you interviewed Miss Clenney, Deborah Clenney, that she could hear Christian yelling.
I believe so.
Again, you weren't in the apartment that night, were you?
No.
Now, you testified previously that her first and third recitation of her statement of what happened that night about the attack was consistent, correct?
Yes.
This is page 4 of 6 of your the arrest warrant whose language you adopted. Actually, you know what? Let me stop you there. If you didn't write this, who wrote this?
State attorney.
Which state attorney?
Khalil.
Mr. Quinn?
Yes.
Now, in this paragraph, which is the third full paragraph, again, page 4 of 6, you say, although the defendant admitted to having caused the victim's injury in her post-Miranda recorded statement, she also provided several inconsistent accounts about the incident. Now, you just testified that at least the 2 of the 3 are consistent, right?
Mostly.
So this could be perceived to be a little bit misleading then, correct?
No.
You had crime scene, or somebody had crime scene respond to the homicide bureau, correct?
Yes.
And I think I may have been there when they came to photograph her.
I can't remember. If
I
it
can't
was-
remember either.
Yeah.
It's neither here.
But-
nor there. Sorry, I'll move on. So they came. Sorry, I forgot where I was. So crime scene did come out to the homicide bureau and they photographed Miss Clenney's physical condition, correct?
Yes.
And that is done to document any injuries, right?
Yes.
You don't take the photographs yourself, do you?
No.
These crime scene technicians are specially trained, correct?
Yes.
And they have like rulers that they can take out to measure things when they're taking photographs, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And in your warrant, well, in the warrant that you signed, again, the last full paragraph, the defendant's physical body was documented on the date of the incident, and there were no injuries to her person to corroborate this account. Now, do you recall that being included in the warrant?
Yes.
Okay, and that's, for the record and for your honor, it's page 406. Now, on the screen, which is Defense Exhibit H, these are crime scene photos, are they not?
Yes.
And these are taken by your department, correct?
Yes.
And these was then provided to the state and then provided to the defense, right?
Yes.
Okay, on the left side of the screen, there seems to be a bruise on the inside of her right arm. Do you see that?
Yes.
Could that bruise be consistent with a physical altercation?
At some point,
Checking the
yeah.
proper opinion. Is that next?
Do you see a bruise, a visible bruise on Courtney's that's the right arm? Do you see that?
Yes.
And on the right side of the screen, it looks like it could be an abrasion. I don't know, there's a mark there that we circled on the right shoulder. Do you see that mark?
Yes.
Could that mark be consistent with some kind of physical altercation?
Yes.
We also have crime scene photos, again, the inside of the right arm. This is, I think, the closer up view of what we saw a second ago. And in this picture, there's a ruler, right?
Okay, yes, sir.
And if you need to get up from with your Honor's permission, if the witness needs to get down, thank you, Judge. And they measure that just so there's some type of kind of comparison, or if they need to describe the extent of an injury, right?
Yes.
And they take that out for something that they think is important to document, correct?
Yes.
So then we go on the lower, again, another crime scene photo, lower right leg that we've taken the liberty of circling. There seems to be some discoloration there, correct?
Yes.
And that could be bruising, maybe not. You're not an expert, right?
Correct.
So these pictures actually do show signs of physical injury, right?
Yes.
Judge, can we approach that bar?
And you testified on direct that you didn't see any bruising or marks around Courtney, is that correct?
Correct.
In her statement to you, she did mention that he grabbed her by the neck or had her up against the wall by the neck.
Yes.
And have you ever seen a a particular situation where somebody could have their forearm up to somebody's neck,
Yes.
and that wouldn't necessarily cause bruising, would it?
Objection, Judge, that's a speculation. Yeah.
And Ms. Clenney indicated also that at some point he threw her down to the ground, correct?
Yes.
Floor. And I think she said on her shoulder.
She wasn't able to explain to me how he put her on the ground.
Right, I think she said something like, and then I was on the ground, right?
Yes.
Okay, which somebody who's just experienced a traumatic experience that Courtney experienced, that wouldn't necessarily mean that she has an accurate memory, correct?
Objection, speculation.
Detective, have you ever been in a fight before?
Objection.
The answer? Okay. Yes.
And was it a traumatic experience?
I mean,
Do you remember every detail about that fight?
well, I grew up doing martial arts, so yes.
In Courtney's statement at one point, she said she was able to break free, correct?
Yes.
Or she was able to get up, right?
She wasn't able. She was able to. She explained that he wasn't on top of her anymore, but she was able to get out, but she couldn't explain exactly how.
And you testified again after looking at the crime scene, after speaking to Ms. Clenney that night, after you spoke with me, you were looking at this case as a case of self-defense, correct?
Yes.
Now, as part of your investigation, did you try to canvass the area to find other witnesses?
We attempted to contact other members of the building in the same hallway as well.
And we were able to locate the witness that said he saw Christian hitting Courtney in the head prior to April 3rd, 2022?
I could not find him.
But you heard about that witness, correct?
Yes.
It was reported to you by somebody else, right?
Yes.
And I believe that account was told to you that that person wasn't sure if it was a closed fist or an open hand, correct?
Yes.
But so you do have some evidence, right, throughout the course of your investigation that, at a minimum, Obumseli also hit Courtney at least once that you're aware of.
From what I was told, yeah.
Did you also interview any witnesses, neighbors in this case?
I attempted, but they refused to talk or be involved.
When you say they refused to be involved, what do you mean?
Like they didn't want to they didn't want to talk to me or give any type of statement.
Okay, this part right here, I was kind of like, what, huh? What? I just don't know. It just seems like this detective either does not care or he just has a laid back attitude that I'm just not prepared for. Or the prosecution told him just to kind of chill. I can't figure it out, but it did drive me crazy watching this. This is probably my fourth time watching it.
That was all the neighbors in the building?
Not in the building, but actually, hold on. I did speak to two gentlemen.
Okay, you did speak to two witnesses, right?
Yes.
One whose initials are JS and another one's initials who are EB, correct?
I can't remember right now.
Detective, so I don't want to necessarily put their names on the record now, but one of the witnesses, JS, I guess. So the first person you interviewed, remember the first gentleman you interviewed? I don't want to play your whole interview. I have some excerpts that I'll play later for the court so we can move through this. But in substance, would you agree that that individual basically said he had seen incidents of, I think, Christian Obumseli chasing or running around Courtney's car trying to gain entry? Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And that same individual also, in that same interview, said basically, look, I know a victim of domestic violence when I see one, and Courtney was a victim of domestic violence, right?
Objection, improper opinion.
Correct. I mean,
If that person's opinion is improper, and the way they express it is improper as well.
that interview, in your interview with that individual, he opined, in his opinion, right? That Courtney was a victim of domestic violence. Is that true?
Yes.
Now, you interviewed another gentleman. I think it was just right after that.
Yeah.
And that individual recounted the scene at the dog park, correct?
Yes.
And in that recounting of that scene, right, he talked about Christian grabbing her aggressively in the tricep area, correct? And he also told you that he stayed around and stayed in case something, quote unquote, would happen, correct?
Yes.
Because he was concerned.
Yes.
And I think he also mentioned that Christian had his hands up her face, correct?
I don't remember.
Now, I want to go back to the phone interview that you had with Ms. Clenney, Deborah Clenney. Remember that?
Yes.
And actually, you never asked the questions about describe the attack and the stuff before. You remember that?
Yes.
And part of that is because I showed up at the Homicide Bureau, and that kind of ended the phone call, right?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you were kind enough, you were very cordial with me, very professional with me, and you allowed me to come in, right?
Yes.
And that terminated your call with Ms. Clenney, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're pretty much almost done with the call.
Okay. And in that, well, you never called Ms. Clenney to follow up and do another interview to get more details?
No.
You never called her husband Kim to maybe follow up because you said he was on the line? You never followed up with him, right?
No.
You didn't call me and say, hey, can you talk to Deborah Clenney and have her make a statement to me?
No.
But what you did tell you was you overheard Courtney saying, stay back, right? Stay back.
Yes.
And we know, based upon your cell phone analysis, right, that Courtney called 911 herself, right?
Yes.
And we heard it. She's there panicking, trying to get help, right?
Yes.
And again, when the first responder showed up, she was cradling Mr. Obumseli in her arms, correct?
Yes.
Now, you also served, well, let me ask you this. Did Courtney, during your interview, she was remorseful, right?
Yes.
Objection, relevance.
Right? She seemed remorseful and genuine with you, correct?
Yes.
Objection calls for ability of the witness. That's right.
You said you executed some warrants in this case, one of which was financial documents, right?
Yes.
And those financial documents were of Courtney?
It was a subpoena, and yes, it was a court.
Okay, and you got a response, right?
Yes.
And, did you serve a subpoena on Obumseli's bank accounts?
No.
Why not?
No reason.
Do you know how he was supporting himself?
I don't recall.
Objection, relevance.
Did your investigation reveal that he was a cryptocurrency trader?
Yes.
Objection, hold on in the inquiry here.
I'll move on to a different line of questioning. You did serve a subpoena, though, on the building, One Paraiso, correct?
Yes.
And as part of the documents you returned, you obtained a lease agreement, correct?
Yes.
And whose name is on that lease agreement for the apartment where this incident took place?
The defendant.
Courtney's name.
Yes.
Is Obumseli's name anywhere on that lease agreement?
No.
As part of you serving subpoenas on the bank accounts and financial records of Courtney, did you see the payments being made for rent?
I can't remember.
Do you have any evidence that Mr. Obumseli ever paid rent?
Objection, relevance, please.
I can explain the relevance. Did you find any evidence that Mr. Obumseli ever paid rent?
No.
Now, part of your investigation also revealed that the week prior to April 3rd, 2022, Ms. Clenney had to fly in from Texas to help Courtney get him out of the apartment, correct?
Yes.
And at some point, he was thrown out of the apartment, correct?
Yes.
And then he came back, right?
Yes.
So, during the time that he was out of the apartment when Ms. Clenney was there, do you know where he stayed?
No.
Did you interview any of the employees of the building that said he was living in a common area inside the building?
Objection, counsel. There's two questions within that one question, one of which is testifying.
Did your investigation reveal at any point that Mr. Obumseli was staying in common areas within the One Parole building?
Yes.
Now, you discussed the manner in which you get up to the apartment in the elevator. Is it fair to say that you have to have a key fob in order to get into a specific apartment?
Yes.
And that particular fob is programmed only for that particular floor or apartment, correct?
Yes.
And the elevator, when it opens up directly into the apartment, correct?
Yes.
So once somebody gains access to the elevator, activates the fob, the next stop is the apartment,
Yes.
right? Now you testified about an elevator video, the infamous elevator video.
Same objection as judge.
You previously testified about the elevator. I understand now. You previously testified about the elevator incident where you say Miss Clenney was attacking a Christian.
Yes.
Okay. You just have the video, right?
Yes.
What happened before they got in the elevator?
We don't know. Or I don't really recall what happened before.
You don't know what happened before that elevator video, correct?
Yes.
Did you interview any witnesses that told you what happened before that incident in the elevator?
No.
So all you have is a video.
Yes.
No context to what occurred prior to Courtney getting on that elevator, correct?
Correct.
Now, she seemed pretty upset in that video, correct?
Yes.
And at some point, Mr. Obumseli is able to gain access to the control panel to get the fob, correct?
To use the fob, yeah.
Right. And that fob would take him directly into the apartment, correct?
Yes.
So the only way to get Mr. Obumseli not to go to that apartment would be to not allow him to use the fob, correct?
Yes.
Do you know if Courtney wanted him in the apartment that evening?
Judge, that's speculation.
Again, that was about a month and a half prior to April 3rd, 2022?
Yes.
As part of your investigation, did you review body-worn camera footage of an incident that took place at the One Parole condominium April 1st, 2022?
I did, but I don't remember what was on it.
Would that video, if you can recall, would that video have depicted some officers responding to a domestic dispute?
Yes.
And in that video, do you recall Courtney explicitly saying, I want a restraining order against Christian Obumseli?
Yes.
You didn't put that into any of your reports, did you?
Not yet.
Now, Detective, in April of 2022, you had been with the Homicide Unit for less than 1 year, correct?
Yes.
Prior to that, what was your assignment?
I was in robbery.
And prior to being a robbery, sorry, I cut you off. I didn't hear your response. You were a robbery detective and you were going to say something else.
No, that was just it.
Prior to being assigned to the robbery unit, where were you?
I was in the problem solving team. I was in the problem solving team in overtime.
What? I'm not familiar. What is the problem
That's
solving?
just a unit that proactively works on ongoing issues within the community.
Okay. And prior to that, I'm going to guess you were on patrol street?
Yes.
Okay. In a marked unit?
Yes.
Okay. During the course of your experience while being a police officer, did you run into victims of domestic violence?
Yes.
No objection about this, right?
Are you familiar? Let me ask you this. When you're in the police academy or as part of your ongoing training as a police officer, are you trained to notice signs of domestic violence?
Same objection. Also improper opinion, I can keep going.
I'm asking if he's been trained or not. I understand. Have you been trained on detecting signs of domestic violence?
Yes.
Are you trained about what they call the cycle of violence?
Objection 702.
As part of your investigation, you indicated that you also subpoenaed or obtained police reports from Las Vegas, Nevada, correct?
Yes.
And you talked about that at length with the state attorney on direct examination, correct?
Yes.
And in your subpoenaing of those records, in addition to the police report, also came a statement, a sworn statement, by one of the hotel security officers. Does that ring a bell?
Yes.
And in that report, well, let me ask you this. Did you review the body-worn camera of that incident?
Yes.
And I believe the investigating officer was Detective, or I think Officer Velasco?
He was an officer. I don't remember the name.
Okay. And this is the video, just so we can make sure we're talking about the same one. The video of the officer who first goes to see, I think speaks to Mr. Obumseli.
Uh-oh, what happened? Okay, it's them, it's not us. Because I just looked. The video's still moving. That doesn't mean anything, though. Bear with us.
We'll play it for you. Or
Yes.
No objection about this, right?
are you familiar? Let me ask you this. When you're in the police academy or as part of your ongoing training as a police officer, are you trained to notice signs of domestic violence?
Same objection. Also improper opinion, I can keep going.
I'm asking if he's been trained or not. I understand. Have you been trained on detecting signs of domestic violence?
Yes.
Are you trained about what they call the cycle of violence?
Objection 702.
part of your investigation, you indicated that you also subpoenaed or obtained police reports from Las Vegas, Nevada, correct?
Yes.
And you talked about that at length with the state attorney on direct examination, correct?
Yes.
And in your subpoenaing of those records, in addition to the police report, also came a statement, a sworn statement, by one of the hotel security officers. Does that ring a bell?
Yes.
And in that report, well, let me ask you this. Did you review the body-worn camera of that incident?
Yes.
And I believe the investigating officer was Detective, or I think Officer Velasco?
He was an officer. I don't remember the name though.
Okay. And this is the video, just so we can make sure we're talking about the same one. The video of the officer who first goes to see, I think speaks to Mr. Obumseli,
Yes.
and then talks to Courtney.
Yes.
But the first person he talks to is, I think, some member of the hotel security staff, correct?
Yes.
And when he approaches that individual gives him kind of a summary of what they have, so to speak, correct?
Yes.
And what he says is security got called, right?
Yes.
Who called security?
I can't remember.
Well, was it Courtney or was it Christian?
Honestly, I can't remember.
Okay. If I told you it was Courtney, would you believe me?
Same objections as you.
So you don't recall?
I don't.
Well, we'll play it for you, or not for you, but we'll play it later.
Okay.
So do you recall that person telling you that his security people came into the hotel room and noticed clumps of Courtney's hair on the floor?
Yes.
Now, as a trained investigator, clumps of hair on the floor, would that indicate some kind of physical struggle to you?
Objection. Speculation, Judge.
You can answer the question.
Yes.
Now, in that interview, Courtney admits she threw a glass at Christian, right?
Yes.
The glass didn't hit him, did it?
I'm not sure.
Also in that video, Courtney tells the officer right before she's being arrested that she didn't tell him the whole story, right?
Yes.
Because she didn't want Christian to get in trouble, right?
Yes.
And you testified as to the medical examiner. I think you indicated that in your interactions with him and reading his report, the manner of death was homicide, right?
Yes.
By a single stab wound, right, to the subclavian artery, correct?
Yes.
Now, in your training experience, even a homicide, right, can be justified, right?
Yes.
And initially, you didn't make any arrests because you were looking at this as self-defense, correct?
Objection.
Yes.
Now, you talked about blood spatter and
Droplets?
droplets and pooling of blood, right? But you're not a blood spatter expert, correct?
No.
You were just recanting what's on the scene that you saw, right?
Yes.
And that the blood, as far as you're concerned, was consistent with somebody sustaining an injury and then walking around the apartment or running around the apartment, right? You don't have to look at the state. You can look at me when you answer the questions.
Okay.
Relax. Okay. Just make sure that you're, he's asking the questions, the state will object, they have an objection, I will rule on it. I will rule that the answer is sustained and don't get this yes.
Objection.
Perhaps.
Seven or two, the state's direct. I mean,
Right now, neither question.
So is the blood that you saw at the scene, I'm asking you for an expert opinion, but it's consistent with somebody walking or running around the apartment after sustaining an injury, correct?
Yes.
Now, do you know, again, you weren't there when the injury occurred, right?
Correct.
You also mentioned in the Las Vegas video body cam, I think that Courtney said, oh yeah, I threw a plate at him or something, some other stuff. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Are you Hispanic?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have an abuela?
Objection.
Do you have the grammar? I'll move on. Do you know what a chancleta is, Detective?
Objected. Judge, objection.
I'll move on, Judge, I'm sorry. Now, you also said you pulled Ms. Clenney's entire criminal history, correct?
Yes.
And you said it was a California case? That was
Yes.
a DWI or DUI?
I think they call it DWI over there.
Right. And that was a case that the charges were dropped, right?
Right now I can't remember.
And the incident in Las Vegas, where she was arrested for battery, right? That case was also dropped, correct?
Yes.
You also testified that you did a cell phone extraction of Mr. Obumseli's phone, correct?
Yes.
Right. And you were capable to do that because Ms. Clenney gave you the passcode for that phone, right?
Yes.
She was cooperative with you during your investigation, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, I offered to be cooperative with you throughout the course of your investigation, correct?
Yes.
I'd call you every now and then just to follow up, right?
Yes.
Or I would text you, right?
Yes.
And I even said, hey, look, if something changes in your investigation, let me know, and we'll go to your office, surrender her, right?
Yes.
Detective, you, in extracting that cell phone, you testified on direct about text messages, specifically text message that took place on October 9th and 10th, I believe it was. Do you recall those text messages?
Yes.
And I believe those, basically in summary, you said that those text messages indicate that there was a physical altercation and Courtney hit him in the head with the phone, correct?
Yes.
So there was a physical struggle, correct?
Yes.
Do you know what happened that caused Ms. Clenney to take that drastic action?
May I review my notes real quick?
Sure.
No, I don't remember right now.
Okay. And I think it was, again, this is State's Exhibit 4, is the text messages from October 9th, where he mentions that I think Christian says, oh, it's been stabbed me in my leg or something to that effect,
Yes.
right? In the follow-up text messages by Courtney responding to that, she never admits to stabbing him in the leg, correct?
I would have to go back to the messages for that section.
You don't remember?
No, not right now.
I mean, that would be something important, right? That you
Yes.
would have noted
Yes.
if she would make an admission of stabbing him previously, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you know that Christian would harm himself sometimes by cutting himself?
No.
You didn't know that? In your interview of Courtney, did she not disclose that to you?
Objection. It's still not relevant. And the court has to report.
Can you say it again?
Did Ms. Clenney, during the course of your interview with her, tell you that Christian would cut himself?
I remember that she said that he tried to hurt himself at one point, but I don't remember to what extent.
Okay. Now, the text messages on State's Exhibit 4, which I have up on the screen, do you remember this text message which came hours later after Christian describes being hit with a phone? Do you remember Courtney's response at, looks like 4:34 a.m., whatever time that was? I think this is in Las Vegas. Do you remember, if you decide to get, this is Courtney, if you decide to get security, call, I will let them know exactly what happened.
What's the question?
Do you
Well,
recall
if I
this?
remember that, yeah.
So is it fair to say that these texts don't say exactly what happened?
No.
And it appears to me Courtney's not afraid of telling somebody exactly what happened, right? That's her text?
Correct.
Now, you also have text messages from January 30th, which you went through with the state that talk about where he actually goes to the hospital and receives stitches, right?
Yes.
And he's cut across, his chin and I think you said his cheek, correct?
Yes.
Now, I think that was an argument over some text messages, right?
Yes.
Again, we don't know what happened in phone calls, perhaps, prior to the text messages.
No.
We don't know what conversations they may have had, correct?
No.
All we have is these texts, right?
Yes.
Again, this is where the state indicated that she said, oh, I hope you enjoy the hospital, something to that effect. I hope you have time to cool down or think about your actions, right?
Oh, I don't know about cool down, but
Well, hopefully, again, according to this text, hopefully this will give you time to think about your actions, right?
yes.
No. I'm sorry, cool down, those were my words. I apologize, all right? Enjoy the hospital, right? You don't know what prompted her prior to these texts to send these, do you?
I mean, enjoy the hospital. Nobody wants to enjoy the hospital.
Right, but you don't know what occurred, right?
No.
Okay. Now, again, in the follow-up message, right? Courtney tells Christian, tell them your side, then I'll tell, sorry, I'm getting older. Tell them your side, then I'll tell them what happened. Right? She texts that.
Yes.
Is somebody who's afraid of the truth coming out, would they send a text like that?
Objection, speculation.
I'll move on. And his answer is that I'm not saying anything.
Yes.
Right? I mean, people could not want to say anything for a bunch of reasons.
Objection,
Right?
counsel testify.
One of which could be that Christian doesn't want the truth to come out, correct?
Objection, speculation, counsel testify.
And I think her next test is an LMAO, right? And then followed by you should, meaning she's asking him to tell whoever what happened, right?
Objection, speculation, best evidence, counsel testify.
Can you repeat it?
I'm saying after the LMAO, her text says you should, meaning you should tell somebody what happened, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's the logical reading of this, right? I'm not making this up.
Objection, counsel testifying. I just want to ask the court director, counsel to stick to the premise.
Did you, I think you indicated that the photograph of his stitches pinged the GPS data associated with that picture, put him at Mount Sinai Hospital?
Yes.
In that area, right?
One of the injuries points at Mount Sinai Hospital.
Okay. Did you pull the medical record? Did you serve a subpoena for medical records from Mount Sinai Hospital?
I did not.
Do you know if the state executed a subpoena for those medical records?
I don't know.
Do we know for a fact that that's where he was treated at Mount Sinai?
I mean, the ping's right on top of Mount Sinai, so, and he was in the bed, and the picture shows that he's in a medical bed.
Right. I mean, I'm just trying to figure it out.
There's no other hospital there.
It could be an urgent care maybe in that area? Now, you mentioned in those photos that Christian has raccoon eyes.
Yes.
And what is that to you? Dark circles in his eyes?
Yes.
Doesn't necessarily mean he was punched in the eye, does it?
Well, compared to,
Objection, speculation.
well, he already has a laceration to the bottom of the lip and injuries to his face, so it's consistent with getting hit multiple times and also slashed in the face.
Right, Detective, you can't say one way or the other whether those dark circles are from a physical contact or maybe he hadn't slept for a long time, right?
Definitely not that he hasn't slept in a long time. They're definitely injuries.
Do you know that Christian and Courtney were up at all times of the night? I mean, they were living kind of a party lifestyle, wouldn't you agree?
Objection.
There was drugs involved, correct?
Yes.
There's some text messages talk about Christian using cocaine with Courtney.
Yes.
detective, as part of crime scene responding to the apartment where this incident occurred, they also photographed certain items that had some type of evidentiary value, correct?
Yes.
And part of what they photographed were letters written from Christian to Courtney, correct?
Yes.
And in your assessment of those letters, would you say that those letters are an acknowledgement of his abuse of Courtney?
I can't remember.
Speculation, best evidence, evidence.
Did you see those photos?
I did.
Did you read them? Well,
I
did you
did.
read the wording contained in those photos?
Yeah, I read them.
Okay. If you look up on the screen, Defendant's Exhibit E, it looks like this letter was torn up at some point. Is this what I'm talking about, the photographs of the letters?
Yes.
And there's highlighted sections in there, correct?
Several objections from the oversight office.
All right, just kind of recapping. So there were some letters that were photographed and retained as evidence by your department, correct?
Yes.
And as the lead investigator, lead homicide investigator in this case, I'm sure you reviewed that evidence, correct?
Yes.
And do you recall these letters?
Yes.
Okay. And so Defense Exhibit E is what the government provided to us, that you seized, the department seized. And part of the letters, although it's writ, says that he's guilty of gaslighting her, right, and mentally abusing her, right? Those are the words contained in this document?
I can't remember, so I don't feel comfortable answering that.
Okay, that's fair enough. Were you able to determine that these letters were written by Obumseli to Courtney?
Again, I can't remember. I read them that one time, and then that was months ago.
I'll move on. The court has these. The witness indicated he has no memory, so I'll move on, Judge. I apologize. Now, you testified as well as to some recordings that were made by Obumseli where Courtney can be heard screaming, right?
Yes.
And it's actually, we mentioned it as video, but it's a video file, but it's actually just audio, correct?
No, I think
Except for one that's in the lobby.
I think they're all video.
Well, they're video files, but there's actually no video because the phone is secreted on...
Well, if you watch carefully, at one point he does take out the phone, and then you can see the defendant on the floor screaming.
Okay, the point of it is, the bulk of it is just audio, right?
Okay, yes.
Okay. Now, the person who recorded that is who?
The victim.
Mr. Obumseli, right?
Yes.
He knows he's being recorded, right?
Yes.
If you know you're being recorded, you're going to say kind of, what you want to say, right?
Objection calls for speculation.
That person has an advantage to know they're being recorded, correct?
Yes.
You don't know what happened before that recording took place.
No.
You don't know what happened after that recording took place.
No.
And that's true for the several recordings that are part of the evidence in this case, right?
Yes.
As part of the documentation that you pulled from the One Paraiso his management company, they also you said you were provided incident reports, correct?
Say that again?
The One Paraiso subpoena returned a bunch of incident reports, correct?
Yes.
And you said there was like a lot of them, right?
Yes.
Those are not your words, those are mine, but there was a lot, right?
Yes.
Too many, I think you said.
Too many.
Right? Which shows a history of some kind of domestic issues going on, correct?
Yes.
And one of those, again, was the body-worn camera from April 1st, 2022, correct?
Yes.
And where Courtney asked for a restraining order, correct?
Yes.
And in that same video, right, one of the officers asks her if he's been violent with her in the past, correct?
I can't remember.
Okay, well, we'll move on. It's been admitted as an exhibit for the court. Now, you mentioned something about Christian's file was 01027 and Courtney's file was 01058, is that correct?
Yes.
And at some point, clearly, I think you testified that her file became inactive in March of 2022, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You don't know when she lost that file, do you?
No.
Now, the day of the elevator video, you don't know if she had her file on her, correct?
Correct.
She might have left it upstairs, correct?
Yes.
Now, you mentioned you served subpoenas on Courtney's for her financial records on some banks, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, I think you testified it was $2 million.
Yeah, just
Is it,
over 2 million.
it's over 2 million? It's not over 1.3 million?
No, I remember the total between both wire transfers. It equaled over 2 million.
You sure?
I believe so. Yes.
Do you want to review anything before you say that that's your final answer?
No.
Okay. Now, the state talks about your efforts to locate Ms. Clenney,
Yes.
right? You remember testifying about those efforts?
Yes.
Right. You actually traveled to Hawaii, right, when you found out she was there?
Yes.
So you got a free trip to Hawaii.
Yes.
The city of Miami paid for that, right?
Yes.
Judge,
So, before you decided to fly to Hawaii to effectuate the arrest of Ms. Clenney, did you lose your phone?
No.
So you had my contact information, correct?
Yes.
You never called me and said, "Hey, Frank, you know what? Things have changed, and we want to surrender Ms. Clenney," right?
objection relevant.
Say that again.
You never called me and said, "Hey, listen, things have changed. Bring in your client."
No.
No? Instead, you enlisted the U.S. Marshals to go get Courtney out of Hilo, Hawaii. And do you know where she was in Hilo, Hawaii?
She was in a rehab facility.
In a medical rehabilitation facility, right?
Objection, testify.
She didn't flee to Hawaii, correct?
Objection. Actually, you know what? I withdraw.
Yes. I mean, what was the question? Sorry.
Did you think she fled to Hawaii?
No.
She was there to get help, right?
Yes.
Did you speak with her
Yes.
when you were in Hawaii?
Yes.
Did you tell her that you thought your investigation was closed? You're under oath, detective.
If I thought that she was on
Did
the
you tell her that this case had been closed by you?
that I was closed?
Yes, sir.
No.
And again, just talking about the phase 2 issues, you recall me staying in contact with you, maybe every couple of weeks or 3 weeks to a month I would contact you, correct?
Yes.
Judge,
Now, talk,
more counsel needs to ask a question and get an answer.
now, in reviewing the financial records, right, you're just reviewing the documents, correct?
Yes.
Do you know why she transferred those monies into her father's account?
No.
Do you know how much she currently has in her accounts?
Right now, no.
Yes.
Right now, no.
At the when you got the subpoena returned, when was that?
I can't remember the exact date.
And what was the balance in her accounts? at
I
that
believe it was about $4,000.
If it pleases the court, as discussed sidebar, the state provided the clerk an exhibit to just attach, which would include exhibit 33, which is an Instagram live video. Detective, I want to pick up a little bit where Mr. Prieto left off, and he discussed with you about not contacting him when a decision to arrest was made. When was your arrest warrant signed, if you remember?
I don't remember the exact date.
Would the warrant refresh your recollection?
Yes,
Okay, do you have a copy of it?
I do.
Give me 1 second. Do you have a copy of the warrant? Oh, you have one? Oh, thank you. Detective, I'm giving you the last page of the warrant. When was that warrant signed?
August 4th,
Okay.
2022.
You remember when the defendant was arrested?
Yeah, yeah, it was like a week later.
Okay. This warrant was obtained under seal. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall why it was obtained under seal?
So no hints would be given to the defendant, and then they would flee again,
Was
or
you-
flee anywhere else.
Okay, so you said flee again, or anywhere else.
Yes.
So I want to parse that out because Mr. Prieto asked you the question.
Objection, counsel testifying.
Mr. Prieto, on cross-examination, asked you the question, did you believe the defendant fled to Hawaii? Your initial answer was yes. He then asked you again in a different way. You said no, and then he asked you about rehab. So I want to redirect you as to that conversation. In the context of the defendant being in a rehab facility, you don't have any reason to doubt that she was there for some kind of help.
Correct.
Do you agree that it's simultaneously true that she could have fled there?
Possibly yes.
Okay. Was that a concern and why you did not contact Mr. Prieto?
Yes.
You've been in homicide and robbery
Yes.
units. You agree that those units are highly investigated?
Yes.
In the context of those investigative units, does the city of Miami do everything by themselves, or do they rely on the prosecutor's office?
We rely on prosecutors as well.
And that's true for review of search warrants, subpoenas, and particularly arrest warrants.
Yes.
Okay. So let's walk through that. In the nature of a homicide investigation, how many have you participated where there have been an arrest?
Currently,
I'm talking about participated, so if you
No.
assisted as robbery or anything else.
in robbery too.
Yeah, all homicide
Oh.
investigations that you've ever assisted on, how many have been in
On
arrest?
homicide alone, about 6. That have 6 or 7 that have been about 8 with that have made an arrest, and then in robbery, probably over 100.
And how many of those is the defendant asked to surrender themselves? It's redirect. It's redirect.
None.
No. Is a homicide a dangerous crime?
Yes.
In dangerous crimes, how do police approach the apprehension of a subject in that case?
As safe as possible,
Why is that?
because a lot of the times they know that they're going to spend the rest of their life in jail, so they'll take any action to not go to jail.
Mr. Prieto discussed with you regarding quote-unquote cooperating with the investigation. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. In this case, you mentioned that you obtained cell phones and did search warrants on those.
Yes.
For Ms. Clenney, how many phones did you obtain?
2.
Okay. How many warrants did you execute?
2.
At any point in time was the defense counsel contacted about the password to search those devices?
No.
They were not? At no point in time defense is offered or was contacted?
No.
In September of this year, the defense was not contacted for the pen. Did the defense ever provide the pen for the phone?
No.
Have you been able to answer her phone?
No.
What efforts have been expended in attempting to answer her phone?
We have taken the phone to the Secret Service, and they have attempted to do what is called a brute force to be able to get into the phone.
Now that surprised me that by November of 2022 they had not been able to get into her phone. Laura, I know you've been watching the updates on this case. Anybody know if they finally did get into it? Because we know they have text messages from his phone and images and video and whatnot. Curious if anybody knows. Put it in the chat if you don't mind.
with regards to the cases that the defendant has, one of which was the Las Vegas case, Mr. Prieto asked you about the posture of that case, and more specifically, whether it's been dropped or prosecuted or outstanding. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. The Las Vegas case, you said it was dropped.
Yes.
The victim in that case, the sole witness, was the victim in this case?
Yes.
And that's now a deceased person?
Yes.
In the context of that letter, which you saw in the one time you reviewed it, was there any documentation of physical abuse by...
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Sure. In the letter that the defense showed on the screen,
Yes.
that was torn in the middle, missing a chunk. Do you know what Christian Obumseli's writing looks like?
No.
Do you know if that was him that wrote that letter?
No.
It was certainly signed by a Christian Obumseli.
I can't remember if it was signed or not, but
So you don't know if he wrote it?
I don't.
You don't know if the defendant wrote it?
No.
You don't know the context of that letter?
That I remember, no.
That letter itself did not document any incidents of physical abuse.
I don't remember.
Let's talk about some of the messages that Mr. Prieto discussed with you. He mentioned the October 9th, 10th, and 11th sequence of messages. And specifically, he showed the screen message where it says, "Tell them exactly what happened." Do you remember that?
Yes.
Was that a threat?
Objection calls for speculation.
In what context was that message given?
Objection calls for speculation.
The message, "Tell them exactly what happened." What occurred immediately before that message and immediately after that message?
I would have to see the messages. I can't really remember right now, off the top of my head.
Sure. I'll just direct it for it. The January 30th messages Mr. Prieto put on screen, the first message was said something to the effect about, "This will give you time to think about your actions," and then a second message shortly after that said, "Enjoy the..."
Yes.
That was the first message. "Think about your actions" was the first message after that time break we were talking about earlier?
Yes.
Okay. So there was the argument that was documented over the overtime of the football game.
Yes.
There was a break in time. I'm not trying to offer anything, so tell me if I'm wrong here. I'm just trying to understand your testimony. There was the argument, time break, and then the first message was, "Tell them, think about your actions and enjoy the hospital."
Yes.
Okay. The defendant, like Mr. Prieto showed on screen, wrote LMAO. What does LMAO mean?
Laughing my ass off.
Okay, so the defendant was mocking the victim.
Objection calls for speculation.
Did you read all of those messages, like beginning to end and all of them?
I did.
Okay, so in the context of processing those messages in those contexts,
Yes.
is the defendant mocking the victim?
Objection calls for speculation.
You can opine.
Yes.
Mr. Prieto asked you about your ability to identify victims of domestic violence. So I want to talk about that. Victims of domestic violence, do they often cover for their abusers?
Yes.
Mr. Prieto, you're going to ask you about the Las Vegas incident where Ms. Clenney at the end said, "Well, I didn't tell you everything." Right?
Yes.
Okay. So is it uncommon for a victim of an aggravated battery to not tell the hospital what caused it?
Objection.
Redirecting. When you saw the body camera of the Las Vegas incident, the officer, before kind of really anything, went straight to Mr. Obumseli and read him his Miranda rights, right?
Yes.
Okay. Is it uncommon for males to be be perceived as the aggressor in domestic violence incidents?
It's not uncommon.
As a police officer yourself, is that often who you perceive to be the subject or the culpable party?
Yes.
Was that the case here?
Yes.
Such as in Las Vegas, where there was further investigation revealed the defendant was the aggressor, is that what happened here?
Yes.
And let's talk about how you got there. The arrest warrant. You said you've worked on 8 homicide cases. How many have been arrests in homicide cases? How many of those arrests were yours?
7 of them.
Okay. And on those, how many did you apply for arrest warrants?
Maybe 6 of those.
In those contexts, is the state heavily involved in the writing of the arrest warrant?
Say that again?
Is the state heavily involved in the writing of an arrest warrant?
Yes.
Initially, for example, you perceived this to be a justifiable use of force before you got everything else.
Yes.
As part of your initial perception, is that the final call in that prosecution?
No.
Okay. What happens in a homicide investigation where you pursue an arrest warrant?
I had to sit with the state attorney's office, and we had to go through everything that has been found in the case to come to a conclusion.
Are you directed by the state to pursue investigative steps?
Yes.
As part of being directed by the state attorney's office to pursue investigative steps, does that include subpoenas?
Yes.
Can you write a subpoena?
No.
Can you issue a subpoena?
No.
Who do you need to issue a subpoena?
I need the state attorney's office.
Let's talk about Ms. Clenney's, the defendant's statement to you. Mr. Prieto asked you, and essentially she outlined 3 iterations of the incident. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. And he tried to focus in on the part of the warrant where it said that there was inconsistencies throughout. So I want to go through that. The defendant gives, iteration 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
In iteration, for example, 2, did she give more or less details than in iteration 1?
On 2, she gave more.
Okay. So even though she told you a story for statement 1, she told you a bigger, more sensational story, statement 2.
Objection, Judge.
I'm just...
Counsel's testifying, thanks.
Was the second statement, because you said it was more details, was it more or less sensational than statement 1?
More.
Okay. So, in that context, is her statement 1 consistent with her statement 2?
No.
Okay. Why not?
Because she's adding more to the story.
Okay. Why does it matter that she's adding more to the story?
Because it helps us come to a better conclusion of what actually did occur, and it's filling in the gaps of the story.
And then statement 3 was that last recap where she takes a moment and talks to herself, right?
Yes.
So let's process through that. That one, that third statement, was she speaking faster or slower than her 2 prior statements?
I can't remember.
Okay. Was she kind of rushing through it, or... I mean, what I'm trying to figure out is, did she give more details on statement 3 than statement 2?
I want to say she was rushing through it because she was, I guess, getting annoyed that I kept asking her for the story again and again.
Why did you keep asking her for the story over and over again?
Because sometimes the more that we ask the story again, something clicks to mind and they remember a new detail.
And so you weren't essentially trying to trip her up, you were just trying to get
More information.
Okay. That third iteration, was it the same as 1 and 2?
I can't really remember too well.
I guess my point is, in every iteration, she told the story that she was grabbed by the neck, pushed against the wall, and then down. Got up, got a knife, and stabbed Christian.
Yes.
Or threw a knife at Christian.
Yes.
But each one of the 3 accounts were different.
Yes.
How we got there, I guess, is different.
Yeah.
The manner in which the defendant described in her statement being grabbed at the neck, forced against the wall, thrust to the ground, as Mr. Prieto was testifying, Did you see any injuries on her that would corroborate any of it?
No.
We talked about the Instagram video ourselves, and Mr. Prieto showed a abrasion on her right shoulder, almost by the bra strap, and press like a circle on her wrists and her arms.
Yes.
In reviewing the Instagram video, did you see those bruises?
Yes.
So they predated the stabbing?
Yes.
There were these neighbors that Mr. Prieto discussed, and they provided the statement that you interviewed. One talked about running around a car, and one talked about an incident at a dog park. Do you recall speaking with Mr. Prieto about those?
Yes.
So let's talk about it. The person that's talked about running around the car, did that person tell you they saw what led to and what happened after that incident?
No.
Did that person understand the context at all, or tell you what the context at all was of that?
He assumed that he was trying to pull it out of the car.
Okay, but he didn't tell you beginning, middle, end?
No.
Dog park incident. That individual, did he tell you beginning, middle, end in the context of the incident?
No.
So I asked you those questions in the lead up to the surveillance video from February 21st. An individual that would see part of that video, that would be an individual who would say Christian is striking Courtney.
Yes.
Without seeing the defendant walk into the elevator, holding the door, and then attacking him beforehand, they are lacking context?
Yes.
Okay. As part of the search of the apartment, documents with the victims' names were obtained. And I'm bringing that up in the context of Mr. Prieto talking about the lease and who was on the lease. Are you aware that Mr. Obumseli is listed as a permitted occupant of that apartment?
Objection, reading.
I'm asking if he's aware that that is. You can answer.
Yes.
Okay. Is he a permitted person to enter?
Would I be able to look at the...
Yeah, you can look if you have the lease.
They need to play the Jeopardy song when this cop is on the stand.
You guys remember it fresh?
Yes.
Was he a permitted person in that apartment?
Christian Obumseli.
Was he?
Yes.
Okay. As part of the documents obtained as part of the crime scene documenting the scene, at any point in time did Miami Police locate an electric bill?
Sorry, say that one more
At
time.
any point in time did City of Miami locate an electric bill in the name of Christian Obumseli?
I can't remember.
Okay. If it did, it would be in the crime scene photos?
Yes.
Okay. When you went through, did you locate clothing belonging to a male?
Yes.
Did you locate his belongings?
Yes.
Mr. Prieto was discussing with you the defendant having, quote-unquote, kicked him out. As a fellow tenant of that unit, would she have been legally...
Objection, Judge, possible legal conclusion.
Did she let him back in April 1st?
Yes.
Did she let him back in April 2nd?
Yes.
Did she let him back in April 3rd?
Yes.
Mr. Prieto asked about, or discussed with you, body worn camera from an April 1st incident, so I want to talk to you about that. Have you reviewed that body camera?
I did, but I don't remember too much from it.
That's fair. Do you recall a conversation about a restraining order?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall the defendant making a statement that she needed to get a restraining order before the victim got it?
I remember the restraining order part, but that's it.
Okay, I'll just direct the court to that. Do you recall a police officer asking the defendant whether she was under the influence of alcohol or controlled substances?
I don't remember.
Okay, I'll direct the court to that. Do you recall whether the police instructed her as to the circumstances in which of how to obtain a restraining order?
Yes.
And did the defendant state anything that would have justified the issuance of a restraining order?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Did the defendant say anything that would have justified the restraining order?
I don't remember.
Objection, Judge, possible legal conclusion.
Mr. Prieto Prieto discussed with you regarding clumps of hair in the Las Vegas incident. So I want to walk through that with you. Do you know whether that was human hair or extensions?
I don't.
Do you know whether the defendant took them off herself or whether they were ripped off?
I don't.
Did, in the video, did the defendant's hair appear to be disheveled?
Yes.
Okay. Did it appear to be yanked, like missing patches?
No.
So you don't know how the quote-unquote hair, clumps of hair got anywhere?
I don't.
Now, Mr. Prieto discussed with you about blood at the apartment and specifically said the words that the droplets of blood was consistent with running around the apartment. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. So since Mr. Prieto asked that, I'm going to redirect you as to that conversation. We discussed ourselves 1, 2, and 3 bloods. 2 were clumps. 1 was where the 2 guest bedrooms interlock.
Yes.
And the defendant was found cradling the victim. The second was a little bit further into that.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So then the droplets of blood, where was that?
It led from the second pool of blood to the master bedroom and bathroom.
Okay. Through the kitchen.
Yes.
Okay. So because that pool of blood that we discussed was number 2, where the defendant was found, or the defendant and the victim were found, that was the conclusion of the droplet. Was that the conclusion of the droplet trail?
I'm sorry, can you start over?
Since we know that the victim and defendant were found at that second pool that we discussed.
Yes.
Is your testimony that the droplets, because it was running around the apartment, that was the conclusion of the droplets of blood throughout the apartment?
Yes.
Okay. And more specifically, the droplets of blood begin in the kitchen, go to the master bedroom, back through to that second pool?
Yes.
Okay. As it pertains to the calls, Mr. Prieto brought up how the defendant called 911. Do you remember that?
How, on which one?
How the defendant called 911 when Christian was stabbed?
Yes.
Okay. So, and we know that Mrs. Clenney, the defendant's mother, was on the phone with the defendant at the time of the stabbing, specifically the first call.
Yes.
Mr. Prieto made a very long conversation about how you didn't ask about the second call.
Judge.
But we'll get to that. So, as it pertains to the stabbing that's having occurred during the first call, that first call was for 6 minutes at 2:43. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay. So, Mr. Obumseli was stabbed somewhere between 2:43 and 2:49.
Yes.
Okay.
It did it again. Hang on. What are we at? We're at 120. My goodness. I don't know why it does this. I think it's my computer. I do apologize.
And we know that Mrs. Clenney, the defendant's mother, was on the phone with the defendant at the time of the stabbing, specifically the first call.
Yes.
Mr. Prieto made a very long conversation about how you didn't ask about the second call.
Judge.
But we'll get to that. So, as it pertains to the stabbing that's having occurred during the first call, that first call was for 6 minutes at 2:43. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay. So, Mr. Obumseli was stabbed somewhere between 2:43 and 2:49.
Yes.
Okay. The defendant's first call after the stabbing, do you recall who it was to?
To her mother.
Okay.
Her mother.
How long was that call?
I believe it was about 7 minutes.
Okay. And then after those 7 minutes passed, did she call 911 or did she call someone else before?
I can't remember.
Okay, I'll direct the court to the records. And then she called 911.
Yes.
So, in a nutshell, she waited 10 minutes before she called 911.
Yes.
Objection, Judge, it's facts, not in evidence.
I'm eliciting the fact to be in evidence. So let's discuss your conversation with Mrs. Clenney, and the court has the audio recording of it. But I want to kind of reverse do it. When we talked earlier, I asked you whether you knew anyone else was listening on the call, and you told me no.
Correct.
Did you find out whether someone else was listening on that call?
Yes.
Okay, who was that person?
Her father.
Okay. When the father interjected earlier, you said that the father interjected to say that Mr. Prieto was at the police station.
Yes.
Okay. That was essentially the first time where you became aware of the lawyer and everything else.
Yes.
Okay.
Judge, this is, I don't object, this is outside the scope of my cross.
It's literally redirect. So, at that point, when you got up and left to go let Mr. Prieto into the police department, that ceased your interview with Mrs. Clenney.
Yes.
When you interview witnesses, do you interview them together or separately?
Separately.
Why do you do that?
So they don't share information with each other, and we can get two different understandings of their side of the story.
So, not having known that Mr. Clenney was on the other line of that phone, you don't know whether he was feeding her answers or not?
Correct.
Separate from that, now knowing that Mr. Clenney was listening in on the conversation, did you have any reason to further elicit a testimony from Mrs. Clenney?
No.
Now, let's talk about the two calls. Did you ask explicitly about the first call?
Yes.
Okay. Did Ms. Clenney answer your questions?
Yes.
Okay. At any point did she go on a tangent?
Objection, under relevance.
Sure. While talking about the incident that happened April 3rd, at any point in time did she stop talking about the April 3rd incident and start talking about the week prior?
Yes.
Okay. At any point in time after talking about how terrible the victim was, did she ever return to the date of incident?
No.
Okay. So, Ms. Clenney not only didn't discuss the second call, but then she redirected
Yes.
to a separate incident. Okay. Can the defense put on the text messages? The text messages that you showed from Mrs. Clenney?
The one
Put them on? Yeah,
Oh, I didn't realize I had my mute was off. I hope I'm not sniffling too much. I've been sneezing my head off. They're going to bring him up now and they're going to go over some of the phone records, which I don't know. I guess it's just like they kind of go over line by line, which is kind of hard to follow. But we'll get back into it. I thought I trimmed this part down. Why is it doing this? Thank you, Patty, for your sweet comment. And thank you, Gentai, for joining. Yeah, we're all going to go over to Bama's for dinner, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Tell your husband to scooch over at that dinner table. She can cook now.
discuss with you how 404 is just because it was screenshot in Central Time and so on and so forth. So, what time was police called?
I don't remember that time right now.
Would you agree it was before 5?
Yeah.
Okay. So, all of these text messages were sent after stabbing?
Well, I can't really tell.
Well, the first message 4:04 p.m.
Yeah.
Do you have an iPhone?
Yes.
Okay, so do the messages kind of load reverse chronologically?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you agree that these messages were sent after the stab?
Yes.
You've reviewed the body camera in the case, yes?
Yes.
When the officer that first arrives and renders aid, what does he do to Ms. Clenney?
He separates her from the victim.
Is she put in custody?
She's detained.
Yeah. Does she handcuff the victim?
Yes.
Okay, so did she have access to her device?
No.
Okay. So when Mrs. Clenney sends this message, please tell me what is happening, asking the defendant what is happening, the defendant would be unable to reply.
Correct.
Okay. So Mrs. Clenney, not knowing what happened and demanding that the defendant call her, then said, even though it was self-defense, don't say anything with the police without getting a lawyer first. That's what's in Defense Exhibit G.
Yes.
But that wasn't the message that you saw, right?
No.
The message you saw was the last one?
Yes.
The last message says, before it cuts off here at the bottom, it is very important, ... Even though it was self-defense, you cannot say anything without an attorney, exclamation point. Innocent people get in trouble all the time, right?
Yes.
Is that offering the defendant self-defense?
Objection, Judge, speculation.
So I want to talk to you about why you didn't talk to Mrs. Clenney and Mr. Clenney any further. After your investigation, et cetera, then you briefed the state, and that's where we were at. At some point, did you realize that Mrs. Clenney's statement was kind of inconsistent with everything we talked about?
Yes.
Okay. Would her further statement have contributed anything either positively or negatively in your investigation?
No.
Okay. Why not?
Because she might want to make up any more excuses or change something she says.
I'm asking because defense counsel crossed on the issue, and I'm asking him why he didn't do something in the investigation. So if counsel's going to make the lack of evidence argument, I can make that.
Right, so just answer the question as to why you didn't recall her name.
Why didn't you interview Mrs. Clenney?
Because I didn't know if they were going to try and make up a new story or change anything from that date of incident.
What about Mr. Clenney? Is that the same answer, I suppose?
Yeah, pretty much.
Objection, pleading.
Okay.
Why not Mr. Clenney?
Yeah, about the same answer.
Neither, on cross, Mr. Prieto asked you about where Mrs. Clenney and Mr. Clenney were in relation to the defendant. And if I recall correctly, you said that they were in Texas and she was here.
Yes.
Were they witnesses to this incident?
No.
So they do not know what happened inside the apartment.
Correct.
No further question.
May Mr. Winston excused?
Yes. I'm not going to recross judges.
I actually have one question that I would want you to either go back to and there can be a lot of recalls as well. Can you go back again to the timing of the 911 phone call as it relates to the phone calls that the defendant was making? I'm just still a little bit confused about that. You said that's not evidence. I have a follow-up. So let me just make sure that I'm putting them all together correctly. So.
Sure. 1 second. Detective, I'm going to ask you to step down. Just to get through the screen.
Yeah, surely it'll get better before trial. It'll be like Sarah Boone's trial. Once they went to trial, it got better.
As stated to the 16.
It's exhibit 1.
Well, sorry, exhibit 1 on the flash drive, exhibit 16, thank you, within the flash drive. Do you know what all of these columns mean?
No.
Okay, will you tell the court what these columns mean?
This is the one that was called. This is the phone call was changed from. This is the date and time of when it was made.
Okay. And this is not constrained at the time?
Correct.
What time is that?
It's UTC.
Okay. In April, how many hours ahead of time is that?
4.
Okay. You mean ahead, so that it's here or not? Minus?
Yes.
Okay. So this first column, 4/3/2022, 146, that actually, if I'm understanding correctly, is April 2nd, 2022, 9:46. So I want to direct you to the one that sticks up here is 911. Do you see that? Yes. Okay, so that's the first 911 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. It's the 17th and 18th slide I'm calling zero. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. What time is the 911 calling?
20 2057, which would put it back to 457.
With 1657.
Yeah, 1657.
So immediately before that, the defendant dialed this number 76-472-8232.
Yes.
And that was an 18-second call.
Yes.
Do you know who that was with?
I do.
Okay. Do you know if that was known very recently?
It could be.
Okay. Right before that, there is two separate calls. We see here one is 437 and one is 393. And then the defendant's number called 512-417-3408. Who was that number called?
That is the
Okay. So, again, two calls, one is 393, one is 430. Let's talk about the first one. The first one was at 2043. What time did that land at?
That is 1640.
Okay, which is what?
Yes, 443.
Okay. So then there was 6 minutes, and then the next call was, again, to the defendant's mother for 430.
Yes.
Okay. As in
It did it again. Oh, vey. One moment, please. Every time I type a chat reply, it does this. I'm gonna have to stop replying. 132.
You mean ahead, so that it's here or not? Minus.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this first column, 43, 2022, 146, that actually, if I'm understanding correctly, is April 2nd, 2022, 946.
Yes.
So I want to direct you to the one that sticks up here is 911. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the first 911 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. It's the 17th and 18th slide I'm calling to. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. What time is the 911?
2057, which would put it back to 457.
With 1657.
Yeah, 1657.
So immediately before that, the defendant dialed this number 76-472-8232.
Yes.
And that was an 18-second call.
Yes.
Do you know who that was with?
I do.
Okay. Do you know if that was known very recently?
It could be.
Okay. Right before that, there is two separate calls. We see here one is 437 and one is 393. And then the defendant's number called 512-417-3408. Who was that number called?
That is the
Okay. So, again, two calls, one is 393, one is 430. Let's talk about the first one. The first one was at 2043. What time did that land at?
That is 1640.
Okay, which is what?
Yes, 443.
Okay. So then there was 6 minutes, and then the next call was, again, to the defendant's mother for 430.
Yes.
Okay. As an aside, did you have multiple calls on that once?
Yes.
So would that explain why there's kind of extra calls overlapping?
Yes.
Right before these two calls, there are 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 calls from 512-745-3582 to 214-789-9531. You see that?
Yes.
Okay. Whose number is 214-789-9531?
I believe that was the victim's call.
Okay. And then, so let's go from oldest to youngest. The first call in that chain is 1955. What time is that local time? 13? No, sorry. Okay. So 1555 is what time? Okay. So 1555 is 355 local time. Is that the same time when Mr. Obumseli getting the elevator?
Yes.
So the defendant is calling the victim and he's not answering. The defendant does that one more time, exact same minute?
Yes.
You agree? Okay. And then again, 6 minutes later.
Yes.
Okay. And then finally at 2033, he does get another call this one.
because it was more like that.
And then 5 or 3, okay. Just for the record, I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you. What does it mean?
It means that I was called police, but I hung up.
So, just to, I guess, put a pin in it and end it, how much time passed between the first call to mom and the defendant calling 911? So 2043 to 2057.
11 minutes?
I think math isn't our best option. Would that be 14 minutes?
14 minutes.
Okay. I don't know if the court wanted me to inquire any more about that.
That is helpful in answering any questions.
And so, going back, so the 911 call, and just kind of, without converting the time, I'm going to use the time here, it's a little easier because math is not your strong suit or mine, okay? It says 2057, there was a call from 911, right? And right before that, there was a call to the 512-745-3582, correct?
Yes.
This column here is the number called, correct?
Yes.
And what is this column here, the CPN?
I can't remember right now.
Well, let me just phrase it this way. There's 2 calls prior to the call to 911 to 512-745-3582. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So those are calls to Ms. Clenney's mother, right?
Yes.
You have no idea when Mr. Obumseli received that statement, correct?
No.
Prior to the call to 911.
Correct.
You don't know if it was during the first phone call or the second phone call, do you?
Correct.
So that's complete speculation, and you say that there was a time lapse of 14 minutes before she called 911, correct?
I don't think so.
Well, let me ask you this. The stabbing could have occurred exactly at 2057, according to these phone records, correct? Right before the 911 call, that's when the stabbing could have occurred, correct?
It could have.
You don't know either way, right? No further questions.
I do have very brief direction. Mr. Briggs is very skilled attorney, and he asked a bunch of questions where you said
Objection.
correct.
Should I cut us off?
No, I'm redirecting him on the reasons
I
for
know,
point.
the very slim.
Sure. So my question to you is this. You don't know, obviously, because you weren't there for the stabbing.
Correct.
The reason that you know that stabbing occurred on the first call is because Mrs. Clenney said she was on the very first call.
Objection, Judge Madison. It's legal.
So Mrs. Clenney discussing the 2 calls, only discussed the first call.
Yes.
And in the context of the first call, she said that the stabbing had occurred at that time, specifically.
Yeah, it is.
So we know definitively that, according to Mrs. Clenney, the stabbing occurred between 2043 and 2049.
Yes.
So, worst case scenario is 14 minutes from 2043 to 2057. Best case scenario is 8 minutes.
Yes.
So defendant again, before calling 911, call her mother, contact the building, and then call them.
Yes.
That's all.
Right. Thank you both for excused.
As far as decision stands.
Yes.
And that is it for day 1 of that preliminary hearing. So Patty was like, why are they doing all this? Well, okay, so this is where they're first laying out the case to the judge. And she's also looking at what they're going to, well, she's they're partly discussing some of the things that they're going to allow in and not allow in. Now, I will say that it looks like she did come back and say that some of these recordings were not going to be allowed into court. I need to go in and break down which ones were and which ones weren't for you guys. So we'll be prepared for that. And then they're still going to they have day 2 of this still to go, which we'll pick back up on this in our next live. Well, the next live, I want to do this Slender Man thing where they had that hearing for that little girl. Well, I guess is she a woman now, or is she a teenager, or she wants to be a boy? I'm not sure. I'm supposed to say they or them, maybe not he or she, but she is, he is, they are. I don't know how to say it. They are, they are 24 years old. Okay. So they are 24 years old and they are going to be getting out, or they're up to be able to review putting into another, I guess, less security style home. They're definitely leaving her into a mental health thing. And I think she has been they have been 100% diagnosed as schizophrenic. So this was the little blonde girl in the Slender Man stabbing, and she was probably the one that was I think she was more of the initiator of everything, and I think the other little girl was more of a follower. Didn't the other little girl already get out? But anyway, we'll kind of go over the case a little bit before we watch that hearing. It went on all day today, but I think the judge did rule on it at the end of the day. So I was going to go in and trim it down for us, and so we can watch it over the weekend. In a group home, from what I understand. Yes, like a group home. Okay, so she's in like a security style hospital now, and she wants to go into a group home that would have less security. Is that how it works, I believe? Yes, in Wisconsin, Tony, in your area. Yeah, and the other Bama says, yeah, the other one got out a couple of years ago. But the little girl that they injured, she survived. So that's the good piece in this story. But it was very popular because of the whole Slender Man scenario. But I think this little girl is legitimate. Like, she has issues. It's sad. And I think that please replay. Kristen, you're gonna have to hit replay. we're coming off now. We're fixing to get off. But I think that when they did this, that little girl really it's sad because her mom kind of, I think, at first ignored the problems that she was having mentally. I mean, what parent wants to take that on, or accept the fact that their child has issues? But so there's some story to that. And I haven't really followed it too much, mainly because YouTube is so funny about younger people and us talking about younger people. But yep, Detective Casey was involved in the case. But I will say that now that she's 24, we can talk about it more. So so yeah, we'll get into that a little bit this weekend. I want to go get me some pancakes. I'm hungry. You guys have been talking about food this whole stream, and you're driving me insane with the food. Y'all do this to me every time. I didn't eat dinner. I'm drinking coffee for dinner. A pioneer. A pioneer, Gentai. Will we get to see Detective Casey? Oh, I wonder if they will bring him up on the stand, Deb. I don't know. I saw it. I think it's going to be more mental health people discussing things, but I could be wrong. I mean, they may. I don't know if the judge that's actually listening to this case was the one that was on it originally. And even if he was, I mean, it's been years. So, yeah. What else is going on? Okay, so we got day 2 of this Courtney Clenney thing. And this hearing, I think they're going to bring up the medical examiner next. So that'll be the next piece of it. Now, he's going to obviously be cross-examined by the defense too. And, this is where they get into the whole, did she throw the weapon? Did she throw the weapon, or did she plunge the weapon? You know what I mean? Pop-Tarts. Oh. I'll bring Pop-Tarts next time. I know I need something like that. I mean, you know what? I need me some. I'm wanting something sweet tonight. I want some powdered donuts or something. I don't know what's wrong with me. My body's craving sugar. But I appreciate you guys being in here with me. Are you guys having a good New Year so far? Any New Year's resolutions? My New Year's resolution was not to spend so much money at the casino. I've, d- I think I've done better. I literally have to leave my debit card at home when I go to the casino. I don't have any control. Never make a resolution. That's your resolution, to never make a resolution, Mel? Oh, I love apple fritters, Patty. Okay, Kristen. Yeah, go back to the beginning and watch from the thing. I resolve not to resolve, JPC said. Okay. I didn't. Did you guys eat your black eyed peas? Did you have any turnips or cabbage? You know, you got to get your greens in so you have money, and then you got to get your black eyed peas in so you have luck. Isn't that the saying? Deb says she's trying to show herself more love. I keep trying to do that, but because you know, oh, Lauren's is to watch more character productions. I love that one. That's my favorite. I know it's I know it's so hard to like if you're on a diet right now, don't come to our channel. Not with the way we and then you listen to what Bama cooks over there and Patty and all them. Patty's always got ice cream. Bama's always cooking up something good. I've been watching. Oh, you guys. So if you haven't done this yet, you have to do it. But you still don't stop watching my channel. But you have to go over and look at some of these women on YouTube that do the like the meal prep stuff. Oh, I love it. It's so awesome. So my sister does a lot of our cooking, and what I'll do is I've taken this meal prep idea and I'll prep like I'll do a dump of like last night with the taco salad thing or the taco soup thing. I dumped a can of corn, a can of Rotel, a can of black beans, a can of what else did I put in there? I thought I put something else in there. And then some taco seasoning. And so then all she has to do now is when she comes in, she does the ground beef, and then she just throws that into the soup mix. And then boom, it like we both contributed. So I just put it in the freezer, and when she's ready to use it, it's there. And she has less work to do. Hey, Polly D, long time no see, man. Crates of shrimp on the barbecue. Oh, yum. My brother-in-law likes to do stuff like that. He'll grill shrimp and he'll wrap it in bacon and throw it on the grill. He loves to grill. I'm so blessed to be here living behind them because it's just like every weekend he fires that grill up and it's something new, something different. And you can't help him. You can't get in his way. You can't do any of that. It's like you let him do his thing on the grill and you either like it or you don't, which is fine usually. Sometimes he makes his barbecue a little bit too spicy. I love barbecue chicken. And sometimes he makes it a little bit too spicy, but you don't like seafood? I grew up on seafood because I lived on the water. We used to catch brim when I was little. We would like on our back porch, or it wasn't a back porch. It was we had a pier, and we go out fishing, and we catch brim and bass and mullet and catfish, and then our dad taught us how to clean the fish ourselves, and then we just plop it in the freezer. And then we'd have like once a month, we'd have a fish fry. And we used to have a good time trying to catch crabs. Crabs are so hard to catch, blue crabs with nets and stuff. We'd take like, we'd put a chicken breast on a string or a quarter of a chicken on a string and put it down in the water and get the crab over there and then try to net it up. Man, crabs are swift. But we used to do that all the time. And my mom would get so mad because she'd have like frozen chicken in the freezer to cook for later. We'd go get it out and use it for bait. Blue crabs are the bomb. Yes. Okay, I have a question for everybody. Do you guys have fried crab claws where you're from? Because fried crab claws from blue crabs are very popular here where I'm at. I'm close to like Bala Battery, all that, you guys. I'm over here in the south, and they're a thing here. Oh yeah, I make gumbo. I definitely I can make some gumbo that will make your head spin. That's one of my favorite. I got that from my mom. But no, some people have. When I moved to Florida, I was like, okay, I got to get me some fried crab claws because I live on the water now, right? There was no fried crab claws in Florida. They didn't know what it was. And I didn't realize that a lot of places don't have fried crab claws. So if you're ever in Mobile, Alabama, or in anywhere along the coast, if you go to Mississippi or Louisiana, you got to get yourself some fried crab claws. Now, if you go over to Biloxi, you got to go to Mary Mahoney's. Everything that restaurant serves is amazing. It's so good. It's like a Creole style, uh, New Orleans style restaurant. Been there forever. Oh yeah, if you're listening on Rewind, yeah, I when I edited the video down to watch it for us tonight, I sped it up in my editor. So I only did like a point, but it did make them sound a little bit like chipmunks. So I apologize if you're hearing chipmunks on the playback. You don't like crawfish, Ann? Well, crawfish are one of those things to where you just get them bowled. Like you just go buy them from a good place that'll bowl them for you, because they're a lot of work to bowl. It's fun. We do it every now and then. We'll do but it's just a lot of cleanup and everything. So there's a place around here that we go. You could just go over there on a Sunday and pick up a couple of pounds of boiled crawfish, and it's cheap too. And we'll sit out, like especially in the summer, we'll sit out on the deck after we've been laying out all day, and we'll just eat crawfish. That's the one thing about living here that I had missed when I moved away. It was just the seafood. I don't get into the head sucking thing, but I definitely like eating the crawfish tails. No, I don't like. My brother-in-law does that. He likes to do. So what I do is I take the head off and I give him the head, and he does that. Kathleen P., where are you at? That you used to go crabbing. Louise said, we had a boat went crabbing after 5 times getting up way before sunrise. Then we were dang tired to cook them after we got home. I know. Well, you got to be able to. We did it when we were a lot younger, but we used to just prep ours and then put them in the freezer sometimes. Oh, she's in New York City. New York City! Night, Kathleen. No, I haven't seen Cher. She always pops in and out, though. Are they closing down schools because of the weather? It's crazy because, like, last night was our night, was our freeze night here. I'm in lower Alabama, right near the water. So tonight it's actually only 43 degrees. So we don't have to worry about any freezing. Oh, Deb, did you? You had a trolling boat too? We did too. That did not sound very good, Carrie. Oh, which part? Yeah, we used to oh man, growing up on the water, we lived on a canal that went out into the water that eventually went out into the salt water, but yeah, I mean, it was you never got bored. You just go out and fish. Just never got bored. I miss being able to just, that was the cool thing about when you were a kid back then, you get up and you go fishing. It's right there. I think I was spoiled as a child. I didn't realize it back then. No, Laura, I think Laura's talking about the seafood part. Well, yeah, those kids don't need to be standing out there for the bus. And plus over here, like like where Bama's at and everything, we're not used to this kind of weather as much. So when it gets too cold, man, they'll shut everything down. Oh, you know what I want to do though? I was thinking about this not too long ago. I have not had sushi in a while. I want to go get some sushi. I don't think I've had sushi since I moved here, to be honest with you. I'm trying to think back. I've been here to my brother-in-law's dismay. I think I've been here over 2.5 years now, and I have not had any sushi. So it's time. And I don't eat like sushi like on the rice. I just like sushi rolls. I don't like eel. I don't like anything that's like real fishy tasting. I'm weird that way. You live by the beach in Brooklyn. Oh, very cool. You're on an island. So my sister wasn't a sushi person either, but what she does when we go is she'll get tempura. So she'll get like shrimp tempura. She'll get and this is what I recommend for anybody that's is not a sushi person. If you go just give it a try, is you go and you get the like a roll with fried shrimp in it. It's called tempura, and kind of ease yourself into it. I had a friend of mine, that taught me how to eat sushi the right way. He eased me into it. And I never got to the point where I like that raw fish just laying on the rice. I'm not into that. I just like sushi rolls because the best thing about sushi rolls is like the sauce that they put on it. I like that spicy mayo sauce. I like spicy sushi rolls. You just don't like seafood at all, Gentai? You don't like shrimp? Patty, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? My goodness. Oh, y'all know what else Huckleberry's doing, my new cat? He comes up on my desks. I think he's doing it at night when I'm asleep. Yes, I'm talking about you. He's looking at me. He gets my pens. He gets stuff off my desk. I come back. I have no pens. I can't find them anywhere in the house. I don't know where he's putting them. He takes the little fuzzy thing on my microphone, on my little headphones, that keeps y'all from hearing me make too much breathing into the microphone. He takes that and he pulls it off every time. Like I'm going through them like crazy now. And I can't find them. I don't know where they're at. He's got tons of toys, and he still does that. Huckleberry is my new cat, Tony. I went to McDonald's drive-thru and ended up leaving with a cat one night. I don't know. It was cold. He was crying like a baby, and I opened the door and he crawled in. So, what can you do? My brother-in-law's like, you stole that cat from somebody. I said, I did not steal him from anybody. was literally at a place next to the interstate. There was no homes anywhere nearby. I mean, nowhere nearby. It was nothing but traffic and restaurants and gas stations. And this little thing was in the bushes crying bad constantly. I'm like, what is that? Where's that crying cat coming from? I look behind me out of the window and I see him and he's just a crying. I open my door to talk to him and he just comes crawling in my car door. Crazy little thing. And I looked at the guy at the drive-thru and I said, do you guys know who this cat belongs to? And he's like, no, we've never seen it. I wonder if somebody jumped him. And then before I left McDonald's, I told the guy, I said, I came to the drive-thru for a cheeseburger, not a cat. Check under the fridge. Okay, I'll do that. That might be where he puts it. Yeah, I'm just going to have to get like a thing and just go up underneath everything and start trying to find all of the stuff that he's pushed up underneath all the stuff. No, I don't like the eels when it comes to the sushi. That's like really heavy tasting. I like fried calamari though. A mixed pit bull, medium-sized dog came right up to me. Oh. I'm one of those that I'll just pick the animal up. I'll try to find its owner, but yeah, I can't though. It took us 3 weeks before my sister finally told my brother-in-law that I had a cat back here. We were going to try to hide it from him because I'm not letting him out. Well, number one, I wasn't going to let him out because he didn't have any. Oh, he did pick me, didn't he? He didn't have any claws at first because they cut him down to quick. And then I was like, well, he's not fixed. So if he gets out, he's going to impregnate something. Good Lord. Cats can have like within a 3-month period, they could have like so many litters. It's ridiculous how many litters that cats can have. I researched it one time. And then now it's like it's just too cold to let him out. The other day it was raining and I have a big overhang, huge overhang outside my place. And so I let him out a little bit while it was raining because I knew he wouldn't go outside the overhang. Just so he could kind of get out and get some air. But no, I don't like to let him out. And then he got out one day. He jumped out when I opened the door and he went running to the tree next to the house and he climbed up the tree. And here I am, my idiot self, trying to get him out of the tree. He knew how to get down. I was worried he didn't, though. When he got ready, he got down on his own. But I'm like trying to figure out, I'm like getting him a blanket to put down to cushion his fall. I'm doing. I am so not a cat owner. I'm like, let me help you, you poor thing. You're too scared to get down. Call the fire department. I should have called the fire department. All right, guys. Well, I've been talking your ear off enough, I guess. I'm going to go get dressed here shortly. I'm going to go to the casino eventually tonight. It's late here. It's like, well, it's not that. It's early still. It's like 9:45 p.m. Hey, Harry. Harry's in the chat. I missed him. Oh, you found a little rescue too. Socks. That's cute. Oi, Harry, I saw that kid that was found. Wasn't there like a hiker that got lost up there in Australia? And they found him recently? Or was that old news? I saw something about that today. Can't remember what it was, though. Can't remember his name. All right, Tony, be good. Yeah, I'll keep talking, y'all, if y'all let me. So I'm going to let y'all go. I will see you guys tomorrow. Or not, no, I don't know if I'll see you tomorrow. But I'll definitely see you by Saturday. Y'all have a blessed evening. Stay safe and hunker down. Don't forget to leave your water trickling if you need to so your pipes don't freeze and all that good stuff. All right, bye. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please do not forget to like and subscribe on your way out, and feel free to leave a comment. Have a blessed day.